The opposition now really is the Conservative Party, even though they are nominally still in government. And for the Conservative Party, all they can do really is try to frighten people about the Labour Party, because everybody knows that the Conservative Party is unpopular. Nobody is keen on them. There is no affection for them. So all they can do is try to frighten us about Labour.
Yeah, the idea that people are going to be voting against something rather than for something is a feature in many people's minds of this election. Rishi Sunak must be hearing it too. He spoke about voter frustration at his manifesto launch.
I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live.
Yeah, that was Rishi Sunak at the manifesto launch. But it isn't just about the Conservatives. There's plenty of cynicism about Labour too, particularly after Keir Starmer had the cheek to compare the Conservative manifesto to Jeremy Corbyn's.
This is coming from the party that's put tax to the highest level since, for 70 years. And they're building this sort of Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto where anything you want can go in it.
This is coming from the leader who twice tried to persuade us not in favour of a Corbyn-style manifesto, but an actual Corbyn manifesto that should be a blueprint to run the country. So what's going on? Has it ever been thus? And are we naive to expect otherwise? Let's get the thoughts of the Times columnist Matthew Parris. Good morning to you, Matthew.
Morning.
Do you think this is a particularly, I'm calling it kind of the bad faith election? Does it feel like that to you, or is it always that way?
I think it's particularly bad this time. It does seem to be a kind of contest for whom the electorate hate most. I persist in thinking, I remember saying it last time we spoke, that it's actually a problem with the electorate rather than a problem with the politicians vying for our favour. The electorate wants things that it can't get. It wants to be told things that are not within the realms of the possible. And then it sort of lashes out at politicians for making promises and failing to deliver. We're stagnating as an economy. We can barely afford the National Health Service that we've got, which isn't very good at the moment. We don't know where the money is going to come from for any of the things that we really want. And we rage at our politicians and call them liars because things that can't happen aren't happening.
But they do lie as well. I mean, that's maybe true, Matthew, but they're the ones who then say, here's a figure we've confected out of nothing. And both sides do this. That's the point I was trying to make to Louise Haig earlier. They've said that Tory plans will lead to, £5,000 on an average mortgage. The Tories say it's £2,000 for Labour in terms of taxes. They're confecting things, aren't they?
Yes, they are, because we ask them to, in a sense. We say, tell us that we can have this. And then some hapless politician says, yes, you can have it. When they're not in a position to say that, then the politician's rival says you're lying when you say you can have it, and we say you're both lying when you say we can have it. And I think it's just a problem with a country that is going nowhere at the moment and sort of vaguely would like to go somewhere, but nobody knows how. And so we're all just shouting at each other.
It's the polling point, because I'm interested, because lots of people get in touch with this programme, Matthew, and say, I don't want lower taxes, I want things that work. And look, Times Radio listeners, generally speaking, I think are quite well to do. Not everyone will be, but they probably average on the upper end of the social scale. But there does seem to be the suggestion that some people in this country think we should pay more taxes and get better things as a result of paying more taxes. Whereas the entire thrust of the political debate from both sides is you can have better things and lower taxes.
Yes, I think the problem is that there's a widespread popular disbelief that spending more money will bring you the better things that you wanted. Yeah. And you look at how much has been spent and is still being spent on the health service, and it doesn't seem to be working. So we're skeptical about higher taxes, not necessarily because we're mean, but because we aren't sure that the higher taxes will bring what we want.
Project Fear is the phrase that was used, it's been used for the last decade or so. It does seem to work, doesn't it? It worked for Cameron in 2015 when he said, if you vote for Ed Miliband, you'll get Alex Salmond, if you remember that. Brexit there was a Project Fear aspect to that. It was there in the Scottish referendum. Is that what's become part of politics, do you think, the idea of frightening people about the opposition, or has that always been there?
Well, for the Conservative Party, I mean, the opposition now really is the Conservative Party, even though they are nominally still in government. And for the Conservative Party, all they can do really is try to frighten people about the Labour Party, because everybody knows that the Conservative Party is unpopular. Nobody is keen on them. There is no affection for them. So all they can do is try to frighten us about Labour. The problem, I think, with the Tory message is, don't vote Liberal Democrat, don't vote Reform, or you might get Labour, is that everybody knows we are going to get Labour, and it doesn't matter if a few people don't vote Labour because don't vote Lib Dem because they're afraid of getting Labour, but everyone knows that we're going to get Labour. So that threat is fairly empty.
Well, we had Grant Shapps on, Matthew,
Mm.
and Asma was talking to him, and almost the first thing he did in the interview at 7 o'clock this morning was kind of to concede the election. He said, we can't give, the distinction he was drawing was Labour are going to win, but we can't give Keir Starmer and power unchecked, was the phrase he used. So the battle is just to say, don't give him a supermajority, because supermajorities are dangerous.
I think that's a stronger argument than the vote Reform and you might get Labour. I think the argument that Labour is going to win, but it would be a good idea if there was a significant opposition. That's a stronger argument, because that's realistic.
Have you ever heard anyone make that argument 23 days out of an election, though? I mean, it's a defeatist argument, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose it is in a way. Very interesting poll. The latest YouGov figures suggest it is true that Reform are creeping up on the Conservatives. In fact, they're not very far behind. But it also puts Labour below 40%, I think at 39%. The first time they've gone below 40%, and the Lib Dems up 5% on 15%. And I don't think this is a measure of any interest in or affection for the Lib Dems. It just shows that there is a sort of centrist Conservative vote that at the moment really doesn't know where to go.
Do you trust, just finally, Matthew, do you trust Starmer? Because we talked about the Corbyn thing. I know it's a long time ago, and some people saying we've had people get in touch. It's good for people to change their minds. But he did stand as a very left-leaning leader. He did back the 2019 manifesto. There is an argument that no one really knows what he stands for. And if you give him a 180 majority, he can do what he likes.
I don't trust him. I don't not trust him because I think he's a liar or a dishonest man. I think he probably is fairly middle of the road, fairly moderate. I don't think he has very strong political opinions one way or the other. He obviously just wants to be prime minister. The reason I don't trust him is that I think once in power, the forces that there are, the forces of public demand, the forces of an attempt to stop our public services deteriorating any further, the forces of the trade union movement within the Labour Party and the forces of backbench MPs are just going to be pushing and pushing and pushing at him, and they'll be pushing at him in a leftward sort of direction. So I think we're going to get a rather directionless Labour government, but one that is sort of caving in towards the left at the mercy of events.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens at the minute. As everyone seems to be conceding, he is going to be the next Prime Minister, so we'll see what happens. So, Matthew, great to speak to you as ever. Really interesting. Thank you for joining us. That's Matthew Parris, their Times columnist, former Tory MP.